Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode on the Lessons from the Game podcast. And today I'm joined with my co host, as usual, Ben Pegna. And today's topic is the importance of rugby IQ. We decided to make this the topic of the show because we have so many young rugby players and aspiring coaches following us, and the feedback you've been giving has been unbelievable. And we have realized we want to make sure that we are delivering more on-point content with you guys that can help you on your journey to level up your performance in the game of rugby. But that said, let me just check in with you, Ben. How's things going, man? All good your side?
Yeah, I'm good, G. I'm good, man. Yeah, it seems to be. It's raining again here in London. So we had a sunny day, then rainy day, sunny day, rainy. So, mate, it's pretty much unpredictable. What about you, mate? You well?
Awesome. We've had sunshine the last few days, and then all of a sudden today, cloudy and rain came down. It's like, it's
Boom.
miserable, man. Boom.
Nice.
So, yeah, but otherwise, no, all good, man. And
Yep.
looking forward to this great conversation today. But I think we just want to thank all our fans or the audience, everybody that's watching and listening to our podcast. Thanks for all the amazing support. Please help us to grow the show. And you can do that by following, and subscribing to our podcast. And don't hesitate to leave comments on YouTube or on Spotify and keep this conversation going. And wow, what an amazing episode with Jeff Pauling this week. It was brilliant. And that inspired this topic today, Ben. Ben, so I'm going to get out the bat, start with you. Rugby IQ. What is it? Today's Lessons from the Game episode was possible thanks to the support of Harris Begley Financial Planning, headed up by former Blackheath player Matt Begley. They are the experts to speak to for tailored advice on investments, mortgages, insurance, and pensions, helping you plan for a future of financial security. So when you think money, think Harris Begley and head to www.harrisbegley.co.uk. Approver Quilter Financial Services Limited and Quilter Mortgage Planning Limited, March 2025. What is rugby
Well,
IQ?
yeah, big question, G. But I think what it comes down to is knowing your role within the team, and understanding the game and the big picture. If I had to summarize it quickly, that's sort of the three things I'd say. So knowing your role, what that does within the team, your role within the team, and then understanding the game and the big picture so that you understand how everything fits together.
Yeah, I think the reason for that, and maybe why we're talking about this, because we see a lot of players sometimes running around like headless chickens, all right, not making the right decision. So from my side, where I can add, Ben, it's about making the right decision, adaptability, tactical awareness. You know, we've spoken recently about this, the player's ability to scan, identify space, identify different patterns in the defense or in attack, changes. You need to know, because sometimes you can prepare for a certain opponent and they might just change the way they're playing. All right, you can prepare for a certain lineout and then all of a sudden they change up the options. So you need to be ready. And that's where the rugby IQ comes in, is having that ability to adapt and, like you mentioned, to understand. Maybe we can give our audience maybe one or two examples of rugby IQ and what it is, Ben.
Yeah, I was just thinking, because we were just talking about this a bit earlier, but there's loads of examples, and as you were talking just then, a few more came to mind, and both from players I played with and players I've coached, and I must be honest, when you're coaching guys and you see them and they're really talented and they've got the physical attributes and they've got all these other amazing attributes, but then they don't seem to know what to do at the right time. And I was thinking of a winger that I'd coached, and he didn't understand. He would stay on his wing the whole time, waiting for the ball to come to him. But he didn't understand, like, when the ball's been kicked behind, he's done a certain role, but then his forwards are still coming back. They'd be really fatigued, they'd be tired. And he had an opportunity many, many times to come off his wing, get involved in the game, help his forwards out because they were tired, offer support, maybe clear another ruck. But he just didn't understand the game, and he didn't do enough. He didn't watch enough games. He didn't do enough to understand it. That's just one example that comes to mind immediately when we talk about just understanding the game and that game IQ.
Yeah, I think that is very important, because I think sometimes players are so obsessed being strong in a gym, being super fit. That's all great you need those different attributes or skill set to play the game of rugby and to perform in the game. Conditioning is important, but it's also very important to spend that time to develop your rugby IQ. And I think where I can give an example, Ben, I'm not going to go on a tangent here with all the cheating going on in scrummaging, but sometimes your rugby IQ, how does that come into play in scrummaging? Use this for example. You've got your opposition, you're going all out guns blazing on the engage, or the shot as I like to call it, and they just refuse the impact. They refuse the engage, and then you get a free kick against you. So what are you going to do the next scrum? Are you just going to go all out guns blazing? No, your rugby IQ is telling you, okay, these guys are cheating. So now I need to meet them. I need to manipulate them a little bit. So that means I'm going to reduce the intensity of my engage. And then after that, I just want to have that post-engage battle. I want to get into that fight. So your rugby IQ plays a massive role when it comes to making decisions and creating new strategies on the field. And in that moment, those key moments, which is very important. But I think the next question is, Ben, like, why does it matter? Why does it matter really to develop that rugby IQ?
I think if you're an individual and you want to fulfill your potential, you, instead of operating in a silo, and this is me, I'm an individual, I've done my wing job. If I carry on with that winger example, I run the ball, I mark my man, I take my high kicks, I chase the kicks that go to. Yeah, you could say he's ticked all the boxes or they've ticked all the boxes, but it matters because it's a team game. And if you're going to contribute to the team, now I chose that example. I didn't choose any of the obvious examples. We could have talked about a fly half or a scrum half dictating play, and we know that our rugby IQ means that we want to play in this part of the field and we want to do this. And when the clock is like this, we want to do this. And when they've got a man in the bin, we want to try and tire them out. They're all forms of rugby IQ. But they're very, they're the obvious ones, I suppose. But the one you used as that scrum example is really a good one. And it matters across the board, every position, So, for example, if I'm a hooker and I'm going to a line out, the ball's been kicked out. How can I take control of the situation? How can I dictate to my opposition what we're going to do? How can I slow it down? How can I speed it up? How can I, what can I manipulate here? How can I make it difficult for my opponent? If it's theirs, how can I make it difficult? What does my scrum half want me to do to help him in his job? And make it hard. There's loads. Every single position has that element of how can I better understand the game and how can I implement that? And when I think of rugby IQ, I also think of almost like having a coach on the field. When you have really good players, you know what it's like. Sometimes you have the physically better, the player who's got more attributes physically, but you've got another player who it's just like having another voice of leadership and wisdom and guidance out there on the field. And that's worth their weight in gold, isn't it?
Yeah, it's brilliant, Ben. I think the other important side of things, why rugby intelligence plays such a massive role, it allows us to reduce errors, our margin of errors in the game, because the less errors you make, that could lead to more points. And especially when it comes to two strong teams playing against each other, it often comes down to defense and the minimal amount of errors. That's what it comes down to. And you need to understand, you need to know what's happening on the field. You need to understand things. You're like, okay, the wind has changed, so maybe we were planning on kicking and maybe now we need to keep the ball and then eventually go for contestable, getting closer to the liner. But, those are key examples. Another great example of why it matters is it can be part of a selection criteria. Yeah. For example, you were prop, you were dominating the scrum, but you got minimal rugby IQ. So that means you're either late to the ruck, or you're missing your job in the line out, you're missing the lift. You're dominating the scrum, great. But then you got another prop, he's holding his own. He might dominate the odd scrum here and there, but most of the time it's neutral scrums, but his rugby IQ is high. So that means he has got a high work rate. He's being very efficient in the game plan of the team. He's doing his job. And is actually allowing all those set piece plays to go off without any niggles,
Yeah.
So that's why it's important, because it can actually impact the selection process, but also not just does it reduce errors, because it will allow you to have higher energy levels. Because if you are working early, so that means not just the body, but also the mind, scanning what's happening in front of you, you know exactly where to go. Or instead, where we see a guy running to the right, and all of a sudden you realize, oh no, I need to go to the left. Or on defense, the guy's folding on the ruck. You know, he shouldn't have folded, he should have stayed. You know, those are key examples, and
100%.
it matters because, especially when it comes to the forwards, you know, we are very complex creature. You know, look at the forwards line out videos, all the line out calls, the codes, and
Oh,
sometimes
mate,
you
it's
look at the backs. The
complicated.
backs will have like 7 moves. That's it. Boom, done and
Oh,
dusted. No,
mate,
I'm
they're
joking.
doing their hair. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
But
so that's why
you
it's
reminded
important.
me.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you reminded me. There was a guy I played with. I won't say who it is, and he was a big number seven flank. You know, back in this is an SA when I was in Poch, and he'd been at a couple of the big unions beforehand, and or the bigger unions, and he'd come to us. And people, when I first saw him, I thought, man, he's lost his pace. You
Hmm.
know, he's not as physical as he once was. He's not as strong in the gym. You know, he used to miss the odd gym session because he was also starting his new business because he was like on the, you know, and then you played with him a couple of games, and then you're like, oh, I get it,
Mm.
and and he just understood the game, and he would like know when to raise the tempo. He'd know who to put pressure on. He knew when to call what type of line out. He knew that. You know, well, there's no point us calling that short line out there because if they do that, then they'll have more people in that side of the field. And if we kick to that side, then they'll be passing off their right hand when they come and counter attack. And he would just be, you'd go, oh, okay, that's. I hadn't thought of it like that. And he knew that guy's the main threat. After 3 4 minutes, he'd say to me, right, that guy's the main threat there. And I'd be like, that guy. He goes, yeah, if we can like neutralize that threat there, they will stop being able to play. And he would just give you an insight, and those types of guys are like gold. And often the people on the sidelines watching don't necessarily see that or appreciate that. But when you're in that team dynamic, and you go, that's like having the coach right next to me on the field at the time. And that was when I think of rugby IQ, I think of guys like that guy as well.
Yeah, we also see today the precision of the kick pass. You know, if you're looking at the players putting it in the corner, the wingers are catching. Is actually we see a lot more tries like that because of the defensive systems that are so strong and so connected. Sometimes very difficult to penetrate the defense pin, and that's not luck. That's just a combination of rugby IQ, and we always talk about it, skill acquisition. You know, making sure that we are developing our skill set and doing it at the right moment. Because at the end of the day, if you do that kick pass at the wrong time and just doing a 50-50, you're losing your possession. So it's
Yeah.
in very important. And you know, recently we just saw one of our players as well. Tight game, tough game, and he opted for a drop kick at the end of the game and we won it. It wasn't planned, you know, but that was him using his rugby IQ, knowing that okay, we're not getting any go forward. He backed himself, he went for it, he slotted it, and yeah, he did it again this weekend at the end of our first half, which was awesome. But another example I want to use is in terms of using your intelligence. Your opposition has a yellow card. Do you know who's off? Is it the lock? Is it the flank? Is it the center? And often we see teams like you get a forward is off. Now, what do they do? Either do quick tap and just keep on playing. Like you should go for the set piece. So if they've got one man down, what would be the best solution? Is it the maul? Is it the scrum? And
Yeah.
for example, is it if his back is out, what do you think is the best possible solution? If you got a 5 meter penalty, do you take a scrum? Do you take a line out or do you do a quick tap?
Yeah. And conversely, you know, if you're the defending team and you're in that position and you're say you got a scrum against you and you've got a man in the bin, have you been paying attention? Have you been watching? If you're on the outside backs, is it important that we have you go and become the flanker because we've lost a flanker?
Mhm.
Or is it actually more important because we've got parity in the scrum? They've not been attacking our scrum all day. Both props are okay. We can keep a balance. Okay, actually, it's more important that we're man on man in the back line defensively because we're close to our own line. Do we choose to do that? Have you been following the flow of the game? Have you been understanding the big picture? Have you been understanding that they haven't even been attacking our scrum? So there's no point me rushing in from the wing to become a flank, and then leaving my wing exposed and leaving a simple run in out wide when that wasn't a threat anyway, and so it's all part of that understanding the flow and the rhythm of the game as well, I think.
No, definitely, Ben. But I think now comes to the next question: how can players develop it? How can they develop that skill set of having a higher rugby IQ?
Yeah. Well, you know what? And we've spoken about this a few times now, and it's not a coincidence, and it's come up a few times with our guests. I don't think you or I feel that enough young players watch enough rugby, and
Yeah.
they don't watch intentionally either. And so when we spoke to Jeff Parling, which was a brilliant interview, came out this week, he spoke about analysing lineouts from the age of 19 or 20 when he was in Newcastle at the academy there. And nobody really did it then to that greater detail, but he analysed, I think it was London Irish's line out, and he understood that the tells were like this, the cues were like this, they did this type of line out in this type of zone. And he was able to, so it came from watching and analysing and watching and watching and watching. And Victor Matfield talked about it in another previous episode as well. Brilliant episode. He talked about how he started to understand. He talked about it a couple of times. He talked about it now as a coach when he goes and consults for Japan, how he can see what tells there are, if it's going to be a throw jump from watching. So I think to answer your question, the best way of developing it is immersing yourself fully in the game, watching, talking to people. And Jeff also talked about being curious, didn't he?
Yeah.
Be curious, ask people, ask questions. Why do they do that? Why does that hooker always, it gives you that, it gives, the more you immerse yourself, it's just natural that as a byproduct, you're going to learn more.
No, definitely. I think where I can just maybe go a bit more in depth, Ben, is like you mentioned, like we said, players are not watching games and trains. You gotta isolate certain scenarios. Did I make the right decision? What decision should I have made? And if you're lost, like you just mentioned there, if you be curious, go ask your coach, but participate in discussion. When you have those team meetings, ask questions or add value. Be part of the process. Don't just sit there and receive information. Really focus on learning. And if you're a coach, ask other coaches for advice. What do they think? You might not be strong in certain areas. I mean, that's what I'm doing now as a coach. I'm connecting with other coaches in the ruck area. What are their thoughts? I'm listening to my colleagues. What are they doing? What are their philosophies? Or it's on defense and attack. And slowly but surely, I'm developing my own rugby philosophy because at the end of the day, I've got ambitions to become a forwards coach, a head coach at some stage, whenever that happens. But it's important to be curious. It's important to learn, but also to develop your rugby IQ as a coach too. So the young coaches listening, it's like ask questions, be curious, study. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like going to university. If you want to get a degree, you got different subjects that you need to cover, and you need to put in the work on a weekly basis. You can't just study the night before the exams.
Yeah, and sometimes I struggle talking about this, to be honest with you, because for me, for you and I, it's a bit obvious. Like if you want to be, like when I wanted to become a better tackler, I took myself down to an MMA gym, and I actually trained with these guys. I started doing wrestling. I went to this gym where a load of UFC fighters would go and train, and I ended up doing some wrestling with the guys with the good strikers, and I would learn, okay, this is what I want to do. This is how I move my feet. This is how I get if I put my foot here, then I'm going to be able to transfer my power into the tackle. I'm going to be able to get a cleaner shoulder contact. I'm going to be able to get my head here. This is how I can use my head. And it's that immersing ourselves, and then taking that with that bit of knowledge and then filtering everything I've watched through that bit of knowledge as well. Are they doing that? No, they're doing this. What are they doing? Then going back and asking more questions as to why they're doing that and not this. And similarly with you, if you're talking to people about the contact zone now and the breakdown, and you're thinking, okay, well, what's transferable? What could I take if I was coaching that? What could I take from scrum principles that I've been doing all my life that actually apply to clearing out? Because it's the same body shape. If I'm coming in and we're going to be more efficient with clearing out, maybe that, and there's just ways that we can learn and cross-pollinate and learn from other ideas and other coaches. So it's awesome. Yeah, it's something we all need to do.
Yeah, I think the different benefits of having a high rugby IQ and working consistently at it. It reduces the amount of errors. It helps you with your energy levels in the game. It helps you to make better decisions, improves your decision making. And then most importantly, it allows you to level up your performance as a player, as a team. Those are the important things. And you need to work on that skill set. You need to be consistent in those efforts. And it's not going to happen just like that and happen naturally. So my advice to players is like, get your homework done. Fully understand the way your team wants to play. Fully understand your game plan, your role, your job. And don't hesitate to ask teammates, why do we need to do this? Why do I need to be there? But yeah, Ben, this has been unbelievable. It's great. And I think, the podcast with Jeff was unbelievable. Like he mentioned, being curious, but understanding why a team is doing certain things. And even you be curious as well. Why do you need to do that? Why do you need to be in that position? Yeah. And I think this is maybe just one last thing which I need to add. The rugby IQ, and I think it comes down to your line-out leaders on defense. Are we going to sack them all? Are we going to hit them? Are we going to manipulate them all? Are we going to contest? That's where your rugby IQ comes in. Is it worthwhile contesting? If we do contest, will we still be strong on our maul D? Or if we do contest, we're a bit fragile. So maybe certain areas we won't contest and we'd rather reinforce making sure we have a strong base to counter that momentum of the opposition maul. So rugby IQ is very important. Don't underestimate the value of it, and don't just be obsessed about having big biceps and being super fit and having a PB on the Bronco. Those are elements that helps you to become a great rugby player. But learn the game. Be a student of the game. I think that's the biggest message that we want to get across today, Ben.
Yeah, it's good, G. Yeah, no, very good.
All right, guys. So thanks for joining us on today's episode on the Lessons from the Game podcast. And to continue to have these type of conversations, it would be great if you can send us questions via DM on our social media page on Instagram, or leave a comment on YouTube or on Spotify, or even reach out to myself or Ben on our personal pages as well. And we can keep this conversation going, because that will help us to develop better content for you guys. But most importantly, to continue to grow this show. A lot of you are not following us or subscribe to our channels on the different podcast platforms. So please like, follow, and subscribe to help us grow the show. We would really appreciate it. But anyway, guys, that's us for today. Ben, anything else to add before we go?
No, good, G. No, it's good to see you, man.
All right. Cheers, guys. Have an awesome day. Ciao. Bye.
Cheers, guys.